I'm spending some time in my favorite park, and my brain is definitely in the past. Feels like lower levels of consciousness. It feels like a life review while alive. But more subtle, it's one thing after another, and then it's dropped. I find when I don't add a layer of judgment on it and I'm with it, then it doesn't add up. It's not additive. It's there. One thing after another, but they're not piling on top of each other and creating a sense of a me that can do something about it. If I were to judge it, then that brings in the me doing something with it, which is judging it. It's challenging, and I find that my brain in the background is trying to figure out what to do with it, seeing that it can't do anything with it, but that it's still there, influencing every single thing my brain sees. So, in that way, the brain is doing something with it and about it. And when there are these challenging things, the brain wonders if it will be able to handle it or go through this or what, or if it'll give up. And there's all these paradoxes and loops, and there's no way to figure it out. Maybe part of figuring it out is figuring out what the cause is. And I had this sense while I was folding up my Laura Bar wrapper that if I was to think the cause of it getting crumpled up was my hands crumpling it up, I'd have to go back and figure out when did I put it in my purse, and then how did I get that box of Laura bars? I got it at Costco, or did someone else pick it up for me? And what else? So the cause is there's no cause. It's everything's happening. So the brain is quite boggled. For some reason, I was thinking of creating 12 steps to undo karma, which in a way is trauma, but realizing that one has participated with a lot of these things and wondering why, and wondering, will it avoid it in the future? And is that enough, or is there something to going back into the past? And I did buy the Tiger Trauma book and the Brene Brown Wilderness book, and then this Tiger Trauma book I ordered through Amazon, a paper copy because it has a CD with it. So yeah, I'm thinking of at least considering this, because I'm on the micronutrients, and hopefully they can support me at a microscopic level to be able to look at things that I haven't wanted to look at. There's a lot of shame and guilt and pain and suffering, and realizing that so much of it I've done to myself. And it reminds me of that Radiohead song when they sing, you do it to yourself, and that's why it really hurts. You do it to yourself, just you and no one else. And it shows people laying on the ground in the video, not able to move. And I know what that feels like. I have been in those states where I supposedly dissociate, feel like a homeless person, don't feel like me, and everyone comes rushing in to put me back together again and feel like myself, but then I don't know what's self and what's other, and I feel a little bit back in this place of confusion. Maybe confusion is better than dissociation, because I do understand that I am this appearance of me in this body. I did briefly look at the trauma book, and there's exercises about being in the body, and I see that I'm in my body, but I also feel like I'm in the past, which isn't existent now, but it is at the same time. So then it's like, does my body exist now, or does it not? And it's right here. So how can it feel right here, yet never and always? And then these are all words. So then I'm lost in words. And the world is made up of words, so it's confusing. Words are confusion a lot of the time. I need to talk myself through this trauma. The trauma I've inflicted on myself. I did a lot of babbling yesterday, and I probably have half as much again to keep going on, and it's not really as resonant talking about it later on for some reason. It feels profound in the moment, but much past that, not really. But it's all part of the process. So at some point I'll babble on about that. And I'm grateful to have a place to go and sleep at night, food to eat, feeling more hungry lately. And yeah, I feel like since I'm on micronutrients and there's no meds in my body, there's a lot of things I'm going to have to feel that I haven't felt for a long time. See if I can do it. I don't know for sure. I've relied on escapes for a long time. Feels like I talk myself so far into a future possible self, but then the resonance of the past seeds are still there too. I wonder how I could transform it though. I won't be able to talk to myself these next few days as much because I have 3 8-hour days at work. So I feel a bit behind because I didn't get to do that babble, and the behind feeling comes from the fact that I forget stuff. I remember when I was walking in the park today, I was thinking, I live in one of the most amazing places on earth with so much possibility. And I have good people in my life, I have food, I have shelter, I have clothing. So much more than such a massive part of the world in terms of the number of people. What have I done with it? What have I done with my life? I've pissed it away for the most part. I'm fortunate to be feeling this now. My brain is trying to resolve some of it, if not resolving it, understanding it. Seeing how it might be helpful for someone else in the future. I can't sleep. I think I failed. I think I have to take Seroquel. Trying to hold off as long as I can. I'm gonna take little pieces till I fall asleep. Hopefully I don't have to take very much. I have to miss work, I think. What a disaster. It's a little while later, and I ended up taking Seroquel. I don't know how much. That's a lot, maybe 150 milligrams of quick release, and it made me sleep for sure. I don't know what to say. There's so much that has gone on in these past few weeks. Something that happened, I texted a friend before I took Seroquel, and I said, I feel like I might end my life, something. And then I was resting and not looking at my phone, and he ended up calling a hotline, and they ended up sending the police to find me. And it was such a disaster. It was a close call of being captured into the system. And I was able to explain things and say I was okay. And then after they left, I tried to go back to sleep, and then I experienced this really, really, really extreme pain of needing to end my life. And it felt like taking Seroquel was a gesture towards that. Or poisoning my brain out of thinking that it needs to do that. I don't know. If I took enough of it, it would end my life, and I don't want to do that. But at the same time, I feel really trapped. Now I feel like in a trap of, oh, it's not that serious. People around me see it as not that serious. And I don't know if it is or not. It's really confusing. Usually I get through it in a couple of days. So this is only, I don't even know what day. I don't even know if I explain how this happened, but I was at my old place that I used to live at, staying there instead of here, and I couldn't sleep. And I had this heart palpitation that was trying to get me to end my life. And I was looking around and I was thinking of zap-strapping myself, but then I realized I could go back to my family's house even though it was really late. And when I decided to do that, I felt quite a bit better. But then I still couldn't sleep, and that's when I sent a message to a friend. And then I was trying to sleep, and it wasn't going well. And then my sister came in and told me, she whispered, "The police are here to see you." And I was so freaked out, I thought that I did something, or it scared the crap out of me. But I knew I didn't, because I didn't do anything. I just went up to talk to them, and they said they had no grounds to take me. But they would take me if I wanted to go. And then I explained, even if I did go with them, they wouldn't take me in. They only take people in when it's a real emergency. Obvious emergency. But I feel like it's an emergency within myself. And I don't know how to resolve this. I think I'm going to have to continue on and pretend like nothing's wrong. Pretend until I can get out of this situation. The situation isn't happening now, but it feels like it is. I need to get over this. I need to conquer this. My family wouldn't want me dead, and if I take a lot of Seroquel or something, I'll end up comatose or brain dead or in the psych ward on ECT or something, or I don't know. It wouldn't be good, it wouldn't be better. It's better if I drug myself when necessary, and then go on with it. Go on with life. So we'll see if I can sleep tonight. It's hard to move, it's hard to do anything. If I'm able to get back on with life tomorrow, then it'll show that I can get through these bumps in the road a lot faster now. I don't know what this is going to show. I don't know. I feel like I'm sort of trapped again and trapped with people who think that I'm mentally ill and crazy, and it becomes a collapse of the wave function. Guess if I can get myself up and showered and to the park or something, maybe that'll help. I don't know what to do. My brain thinks all over the place about what's happened in the past, what's happening now, and it's so confusing. I made an agreement with the universe to play a mentally ill person. I didn't really put a time limit on that, universe. How much longer do I have to play a mentally ill person? It's October 19th at 8:15 p.m. and I took the Seroquel on Tuesday the 17th in the morning sometimes, probably around 7 a.m. And I've been up all day, a lot of body pain, and I feel a lot better at this moment right now, thanks to a conversation with my brain twin and a conversation with him yesterday. I don't know where I'd be without him. And I'm going to take some Seroquel tonight. I took 2 last night and maybe 1 in the middle of the night. The day before in the morning I took, I don't know how many, maybe 3 or 4, which knocked me out for all day and all night pretty much. So tonight I will see if I can sleep with just 1. So much is happening, so much is being processed, and I wish that in the worst of the crisis I could have captured the data on the Muse headband, and I kind of wish before I took any Benadryl or Seroquel that I had peed in that thing and sent it off. but that would have cost $1,000 to analyze. So maybe next time. So I hope the worst of it's over. It would be amazing if tonight I can sleep with one Seroquel. It's the falling asleep that's the trouble. I feel like I can see a lot of things while I'm laying there sleeping. I can see like a portal. I'm watching different people and things happening, and I don't know if that's astral travel or lucid dreaming or what. I don't think it's lucid dreaming. It's like looking into a pond and seeing different things happening that you wouldn't see if you didn't put your face into the pond. It's really strange. And that's the part that I think scares my body, is that remote viewing, and then coming back from the remote viewing makes my heart freak out and make me feel like I need to end my life or something. Because I think the body is freaked out by consciousness leaving the body. Yeah, so much has happened, and I wish I had the courage to talk about it on video while it's happening, but I like to talk about insights, but I'm not really feeling the urge to talk about all the strangeness that gets processed in these lower states of consciousness, because I don't really want to collapse those into possibilities. I want to completely negate them and drop them. Whereas the ones that I talk about, I like to think of them as possible, perhaps. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't see this as a failure. If I'm able to get through this and that suicide program stops and I can be back on micronutrients only, then it's a pretty big success. The main thing was staying out of the hospital. And I'm grateful for those who are around me, supporting me through this process of getting through this death that happens. I don't need to die, I need to sleep. And sometimes this death thing prevents me from sleeping. So by taking Seroquel, I go to sleep, and what really needs to happen happens, which is sleep. And I'm talking in a way that might lessen the magnitude of what I've been through these last couple weeks. It's been very, very, very challenging. And the Seroquel was mercy. Mercy I can't take anymore. I don't know if it's good to let it go that long. Like in California, I just drugged it right away. Maybe that was better. I don't want to have to drug it all the time, though. I have to see how the Seroquel interacts with the micronutrients, or I might end up having to put myself back through square one of the mental health paradigm. I really don't know. But the thing is, knowing that I've gotten this far, it would have been 20 weeks tomorrow, or 9 months without a crisis on yesterday, but I didn't make it that far, just under 9 months. But I made it further than 8.5 months. So maybe this just shows that it's going to happen every 8.5 to 9 months, and I need to be prepared and maybe nip it further, because it has been going on for a couple weeks, but not to that extreme. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens next time. I'll have to mark it in my calendar. if I'm able to get through it, then I won't create the story of she went off her meds and killed herself. I don't want to create that story. Universe, that's not the story I want to create. Okay? I wanted to create being on micronutrients only, but I failed to create that. But maybe I'm creating the story that one can be on micronutrients daily and then take whatever PRNs one needs when necessary to get through this pain. And most importantly for myself is staying out of the hospital. So far I've been able to continue that, and soon it'll be 18 months. I don't remember when that date is, but it's a failure and it's a success. And failing has played into the struggle of feeling like a failure overall, reverberating through my whole life. But I don't want to go into that now, because talking with my brain twin, I was able to feel more back into creative consciousness, which leads me to talk to myself. I did create the video of when I took Seroquel, and I haven't edited it yet. But last time it took me a week before I talked to myself, and this time it's a couple of days. So we'll see what happens. The main thing is sleeping. I did invoke the power of prayer, praying God for mercy. The pain is still there somewhat. I'm going to take some niacin to deal with this supposed anxiety pain. And we'll see if I can get through the next few days and reattach to free will and separate movements and some slight expanded epigenetic matrix. Doing laundry would be a good thing. I think I've said this before, but I think the worst might be over. I'm not sure if that's true. I'd like to think it is, because for a few hours I've had quite a bit of relief from the body pain and anxiety. And I have a new strategy to take a little bit of Seroquel at night and then take niacin 3 times a day, 1,000 milligrams, niacinamide actually. And hopefully I can sleep, and I'm going to stop taking the amino acids for a while, because apparently Seroquel blocks dopamine and serotonin, but the amino acids could create more dopamine and serotonin stimulation, so it might be exacerbating that process for now. So I've taken 3 doses of 4 micronutrients today, and feeling a little slow talking to myself, but I've gotten a lot done. I did my laundry today. I've read some of a book. I read this blog post. I'm able to read, and that's the cool part about not fully drugging myself up, is even though I'm in pain or have some kind of anxiety, I can still do something. I don't have to be in pain and laying there not able to do anything. And it's been raining a lot, and I've been sitting outside bundled up. It feels nice to be outside, just not trapped in a house or a room or something. There's something to that just being in the openness. One doesn't feel trapped. So the brain won't create stories about being stuck or something like that. And I've learned a lot, and I don't like to talk about things when I'm in these awful states because I feel like it might exacerbate the storytelling mechanism. Maybe it's just as detrimental to talk about things in the more positive states, or I don't know. I'm doubting sharing any of this right now. I'm just wondering what value it has, and I really don't know. Like I said, I've kind of felt substantially better these last couple hours, and I have a lot of supportive people to thank, even though they probably don't know and didn't know to what extent I was suffering. People have a pretty good idea that one is suffering a lot when one is in the psych ward. It just goes with the territory. But when one manages to avoid the psych ward, I think people around might have a tendency to think that one is doing better than one is. And at the same time, I was trying to show that I was doing better than I was. And I've gotten through this crisis better than I did in January, and getting out of bed after a day and a half and sort of staying around the homestead, but still suffering a lot. But like I've mentioned, if I were in the psych ward, I would suffer a lot in there, and I'd be subject to people asking me things, and I remember feeling really desperate to get into the psych ward before and being turned away, and then the next time having to make it sound worse than it was. Not worse than it was, worse than it appeared, because I seemed like I was okay, but I wasn't, so I had to make it very vocal that I wasn't okay, so they would take me in. But then when that happens, one appears worse than one wants to appear, or should need to appear, and then maybe that justifies harsher treatment. I don't know. It didn't go well when that happened. Because the 2 times before that, I was taken by an ambulance, so that means I think they think of it more seriously than when a friend or a family member brings a person in. Then they're like, well, it can't be as much of an emergency or something. So, yeah, but I managed to get through the distress, and it was really awful. Before I took that Seroquel, I really thought, it's not like I thought I was going to kill myself. It felt like the terror of ending my life. And I've talked about feeling the terror of having the choice of jumping to one's death or burning alive. Both choices are terrible and terrifying, and it feels like the end. It really felt like the end. But my intention was to go to sleep, so I took some Seroquel to go to sleep. So my heart pounding might feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, I'm going to kill myself. But taking a couple Seroquel is, no, I'm not going to. I just want to go to sleep, for God's sakes. I hadn't been able to sleep. So I feel like my heart might be beginning to settle down. It really feels like distress in the heart. And last night I had a bad dream. It was terrible, and my heart was pounding, and I woke up and I realized it wasn't happening now, but it was still terrifying. And when this real terror comes over me, it feels like my heart is beating this way instead of this way. I talked about how I learned about this circular motion of the heartbeat, kind of like this. It's not actually beating, but there's this pulse that goes in a circle, but when we stay still, we feel it as a beat. Well, I can feel it changing on its axis. It was really weird. It's almost like going into the past, and the heart, maybe it's not even the heartbeat, it's like the energy field that's there. Again, it's not a heartbeat, it's the energy field, and it inverts or changes on its axis, and all of a sudden I'm in the past. And I feel like I'm either creating or I'm in the past, and created a lot. So the rubber band effect was quite large, and it might not be over yet. But like I said, it's been going on slightly since the end of September, and yeah, it's been a few weeks, and it's hard to withstand it. But I feel like, yeah, it could have something to do with past lives and karma. Maybe I ended my life in a past life, because the other deaths that I've felt like they could be past life deaths. So maybe I experience this every 8 to 9 months. It's really not fun. I don't like it at all. It's quite terrifying. And I found myself bargaining with the universe, like, I'll take this pain and the suffering, I don't care, just protect everyone that I love, protect everyone. Because before I was labeled 6.5 years ago, I said to the universe, fine, put me through all this pain, just, protect those that I love. And yeah, it's really weird. And I also asked God for mercy. I think I talked about that already, and that worked to some extent for a little while, talking with people, yet at the same time not wanting to interfere. There's this feeling of any move I make interferes with people's lives, yet at the same time we're all related and linked up, so we participate in each other's lives. We can't help it. So that was boggling my mind, and yeah, it's all really mind-boggling. It has been. It's hard to explain. And then I got an email, because I'm on Dabney Alex's email list, and she sent an interview talk from a year ago, but she wanted to reshare it with a woman. I can't remember her name. And it was so poignant to what I've been going through, talking about how when this energy comes in, it's like an overflow of water in a stream, and it leads to sediment sort of churning up, and they also talked about how as time goes on, it gets harder. Not necessarily easier, but we're more strong to be with it, and that's sort of what I've been trying to do, is really be with this pain. And it's something I started doing in the psych ward in April of 2016, when I stopped asking for PRNs when I was experiencing a lot of the pain. I would sit with it. So I've been sitting with a lot of it, and when I was in the psych ward, it did eventually let up, and I felt like I could go on. But in the psych ward, there's limited things to do, so I mirror that right now, in that I limit what I do. I don't do too much. I don't get involved in too much out there, because the past is so present that it's going to get mixed up with the people that I'm around, and it'll be even more confusing than if I'm with it alone and stuff's coming up and I see it has nothing to do with the moment. I can see it's the past. Whereas if I'm wandering around with people or doing stuff or trying to live my regular life, that's going to be projected on them and might create a scenario where I'm afraid or something, when really I'm afraid and this is past stuff. But then people around me, I could be thinking I'm afraid of them, but it's processing the past. And Eckhart Tolle might call that the pain body or something. I never really resonated much with that chapter. I could reread it because it does feel like a lot of pain. And I feel like I do need to sit with that. One could say I can see why it's there. And the sun is shining on me. The weather has really mirrored my ups and downs, that's for sure. It's pouring and now I'm feeling a bit better and the sun is shining. I just got to the park and deciding where to sit, and nature's speaking to me already. Look at that weird spider. Such a weird looking spider. I've never seen anything like that before. I'll just let him be and I won't sit there, but never seen a spider that looks kind of like a crab. And I'm not really gonna edit these videos I make today, so forgive the breaks and the coughs and the screw up of words and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if it's safe to talk to myself without scaring myself yet. Or if it's even safe to be at the park yet by myself. And I got in my car and I started to drive here, and the brakes were squeaky. And I thought, oh, my brakes have kind of messed up just sitting there. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, I haven't gone anywhere for a week, haven't driven. I got majorly derailed, and I don't think I'm going to edit the other videos I made along the way from the last week. So I won't really know what I said to myself, and I don't really want to know. I don't think I said anything too freaky, but it was a definite, really, really scary week. And I don't know if it's over because it was pretty intense, even last night. And I was sitting there and then I was thinking, oh man, I don't know if I can take this anymore. I might just drug myself with Seroquel more tonight or something. And then it let up. It seems to have this mechanism of super intensity, so intense, but at the same time, enough that one can handle. People are walking by. Hi. So there's this mercy, and I've experienced that before while in the psych ward, thinking, oh my gosh, I can't take another moment. But in the psych ward, there's someone to say, oh, can I have a PRN? Or, oh, I'm feeling this, or I'm thinking that, and then they do something to fix it. But outside, it seems like, and on my own, it seems like I can decide to do something to fix it. Like, okay, I know I can take a Seroquel, and I will if this and this and that happens. But then I didn't have to, and I managed to fall asleep on half of a Seroquel. Whereas the night before I took 3/4, and the night before I took 1 1/4, and the night before I might have taken 2. I've lost track. I've only taken Seroquel at night, except that day on Tuesday morning when I felt like I was dying and I was going to kill myself, but I knew I wasn't. And then I took Seroquel and just sort of passed out for a couple days. Things seem to happen out of order. It's really weird. And there's a little bug on my screen, but whatever. So, yeah, this causality is not making sense. I'll try to make this as linear as possible, but yeah, I learned a lot. It was really scary. I could make up a bunch of ideas about what's going on, but basically it seems like I'm going to be derailed every 8 to 8.5 to 9 months, because it started at about 8.5 months again. And I did talk myself through a lot of it because it was there and it got worse. It was bearable, then it got really worse. So I'm wondering if, since today I haven't really felt too much of it, that the process is over, and it's been about a week of the worst of it, of really having to lie low and not do anything. Or since I've been still kind of functioning most of the time, if I haven't really rested it all off, and it'll keep coming back each day, or what? I'm not sure, because this is all new territory. I think being here right now, I'm not necessarily feeling better talking to myself, so maybe I'm not quite ready. Because I think talking to myself when my brain is still kind of confused just adds to the confusion, if the confusing part isn't over. And I could say that I equally don't know what the heck I'm talking about on a daily basis in the last year or so, but at least I don't feel afraid and things like that during that time. So yeah, a lot of fear of death, and there's this theme of feeling like one is interfering with life and people's lives by sensing past karma that sometimes feels like it's from past lives or future lives or present life, and trying to find causality, which is impossible. Because if one tries to find causality, one has to go back to the Big Bang, if that was even the cause. And it feels like, when my brain implodes like that, it feels like a big bang in my own life. And then I think about the other times I've had this so-called psychosis, and then I think about how I've experienced this fear in small doses in my life at other times when I didn't have psychosis. Like the fear of dying when I was a little girl. I was just really young. It was terrifying. And I jumped out of bed and ran for the security of my mom. It's the same fear that makes me jump out of bed now. Like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid I'm going to die one day or now. And then the brain creates some kind of story. This feeling like I was ending my life but intending just to knock myself out and go to sleep. Felt like, well, that could have been a past life, or a possibility based on all the karma of my life this life and last life and whatever that even means. And our lives aren't separate. And I'm really seeing how our brains are really connected, and they really do respond to each other. Someone was saying to someone, or someone said to me, I don't want to say names, someone said to me that they said to someone else that so-and-so hadn't texted them, and then they went down and looked at their iPad, and so-and-so had just texted them. And so-and-so hadn't texted in quite a while. So it's like, it's so connected. And then somebody was saying they were stressed, and that they noticed that another person hangs around them a lot when they feel stressed. It's like they know or something. And these are things that I sense every second sometimes, and it's confusing and disorientating, and it feels like when it gets going too much, it could almost be like amplified into a so-called hallucination. Because if that's how it's working now, and that's how it's always been working, and then one missed that all along, then it boggles the mind. And then the mind tries to figure out, well, how could I have done things differently? But then that's impossible. So it's really boggling of the mind. And then sitting there with a boggled mind around other people feels like they must be picking up on the boggledness if we're always picking up on each other's minds in so-called good and coherent ways. Then it's happening in the incoherence. So then one feels like when one is in a negative state and incoherent, it's not good to be around others, and it's creating more chaos, or it's trying to resolve the chaos by really feeling it in the body when it was missed all along. It's really confusing, and I feel too that it was prudent not to say what was going on. All that I really said to anyone was, I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling distress, I'm going to be taking Seroquel, I'm going to sleep. So they knew. So they wouldn't come into the room and be like, what's going on? But other than that, I didn't share anything that was going on inside, because it comes and goes, and it passes, and it fades away. And those things are the past. But then it makes one want to talk about the past, but I don't know when is a good time to do that. It doesn't feel like now is at all. Those are the things that come out of nowhere. So if I felt compelled to talk about those things with the people around me, then they'd have to engage in those things, and they'd be thrown off their trajectory. And then I just really felt like, wow, I don't want to have the people around me that care about me have to shuttle me off here and then visit me and all that hoopla. Just felt like I want to get through it myself, and I do not recommend that for anyone. I'm not saying that people should do that. It's so difficult. And it goes with the theme that I've been talking about, that it doesn't get easier. That is so challenging. It's more challenging to try to go through it alone, but supported. People are around, but not saying everything. It's sort of like if I were in the psych ward, I wouldn't say to every single inpatient what I'm going through. I would say it to the doctors, because they're the ones that are there to listen to that particular thing, and the nurses when they say, how's it going? And then they just use those things to decide whether one is ready to go. Well, I can say nothing about stuff that's going on. It seems to pass anyway, whether I say it to a doctor or nurse. which I don't if I'm not in the psych ward. And then I just determine myself whether I'm ready to take a little ride to the park or not. Self-determination and figuring it out for oneself, which again, I don't recommend. But if it got so bad, there were people around me to help me. And I'm going to end this and talk on another video because I have 15 minutes to do the upload easily, which I don't know when I'll do that because my brain has very, very limited capacity right now. Very limited. So yeah, I've learned a lot. So yeah, this process is very humbling. I can see why they call that energy mania. I didn't feel manic, but I was creating a lot. And that trajectory came to an end. And that's part of the thing. I don't know who I am. I've created things that are so-called good and so-called bad, and I felt an element of a lot of karma of this energy ending the creative process. And when I was at work and in that training, when I introduced myself, I said, I'm from planet Earth most of the time. So I was being playful and silly. And then we did the sharing thing, and it almost feels like showing myself makes it fall apart too. Showing my true self. It's not safe to be my true creative self that is without this past. So then the self comes back online. And I could say all those things, but at the end of it all, it seems like it was time for that to happen. So I could say this went wrong or that went wrong, but it just seems like these last few years, it happens every 6.5 to 9 months, or 8.5 months. But earlier this year, I did have another mini event shortly after, so I do need to be aware of that. And it makes me wonder if right now is a good time to do that business course, because it's supposed to be a mental health advocate, but as soon as I feel strong and I'm advocating, things fall apart, so I don't know if that's right. Today, it entered my mind to go to the island for a month. I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know what to do. Sometimes I don't feel like it's safe to be around people because I really do change based on who I'm around. Obviously, because people interact, so I don't know. I can't really predict how I'm going to be. And the conversation and the theme of what things are about changes depending on who's around, so I don't know. I feel like, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I feel like the things I predicted in terms of walking into a context that's not right for me has happened. But at the same time, it possibly could have happened any which way because it's time. So I'll probably say a lot of different possibilities now, but at the same time, it's just time. everything really does respond to the human brain, but then it's not in isolation, so that's what makes these more challenging, lower energy times really hard, because one can't really do anything about it. One needs to go through it. And then doing something about it creates a lot of the chaos about what it is and then what needs to be done. And I've talked at length about all of that. And even though this has happened, I still feel a lot of what I said to be true, but then it doesn't change. It doesn't prevent it. Doesn't prevent it. So I might have to be careful about creating something that is too far into being my future self, or a self that I can't be here. I don't even know if that is true. I really don't know. I think something I was thinking about this morning is I came to this earth with a lot of bad karma. I don't think I was a very nice child. And I can see why, though. I can see some things that I don't really want to talk about right now, but it's not an excuse. It's just when I fall into these lower states of consciousness and I'm seeing all that happened and my brain is just swirling like I've been hit in the head. There's a lot of awfulness, and then it's hard to be with the good that has been there too. And then that's when I'm like, well, which version am I? And I don't think I'm any of these, yet I'm all of them at the same time and never, and it's really confusing, and I don't know how to flower. I don't know how to create those preconditions for that to happen. I don't think it's up to me. There's some other greater force at play, or greater power, which is something that's within us. It's not separate from us. I realize that there's no great ruler. The great ruler is within us, and when we each change the rules individually, that brings about a different world. Blah, blah, blah. Yet, I can't do it. The theme of I can't help people. And when I was at work, I was talking to someone, and I felt such sadness in their heart, like so much sadness, and I felt like I just wish I could help this person. And I saw all the factors, and it just broke my heart. And that was another thing that caused this fall. Yet again, I could say it was time. But it seems like when it's the time for the fall, there'll be things really shown to me, and I guess there's somewhat of a theme of seeing how we've been brought up creates a lot of this, and nobody tries to do it intentionally. It's just such a chaotic, complex mess of the infinite quantum flux of holons and holographic crap. And then it's like, it's inescapable in its life. And that's the thing, wanting to escape and feeling like death is the only way out, and then realizing that one really does love all these beings around oneself and wouldn't want to cause that kind of pain. And then there's the pain of existence. It just keeps shifting. There's nothing for the brain to cling on to. No identity, that's the thing. But then it seems that the brain puts itself together enough to go back about the existence we've all co-created for each of us to exist in. I don't know if it was a good idea to go to that cognitive remediation conference. It was really sad. Because if I get through this, it'll kind of show the process of, even though being on micronutrients, my brain slowed down majorly, and I was talking about that along the way. It sped up, and when it speeds up, it's in a different dimension, and then it slows down, and the slowdown, it's like putting the brakes on so fast that putting stop to that so fast that everything keeps going that's in the container. So all this debris gets thrown around in chaos, and one has to process it in order to go backwards. Usually my mind is pretty empty, but there's so many different memories and associations, and it's mind-boggling, and everything around oneself leads to some association of the past. But yesterday I remember having a thought. It's thought. It's not happening now. It's thought. It's thought. It's memory. And I learned more about the process. It seems like when I was processing stuff, there was either pain, different energies moving in the body, different places, the whole body, the whole energy field, like the pain of anxiety without the word anxiety. And then after the pain would go, then there were stories or thoughts, or one could say very subtle so-called hallucinations and delusions, in that they weren't happening now. If I would have said them out loud, people would have been like, what are you talking about? But they weren't so delusional. They seemed like, yeah, these were things from the past. Didn't seem like delusion. It seemed like processing the past. In January, it felt like processing trauma. This felt like processing trauma, then processing the past. It is the past. It has nothing to do with what's happening now. But it was there and really interfering with functioning, because it's so in the foreground that my brain can't be attentive to what is there now. And then I'm sitting there like kind of a zombie, as opposed to moving around, being happy, interacting with people, and being able to create a different scenario. I'm creating a scenario where people are like, oh, here, I made dinner, do you want some? Like, just not contributing. And that's okay, but maybe processing that stuff is contributing. And there was a lot of fear of death, and I understand that's not an option unless it happens. And there's this feeling like I might end my life sometimes, but when I take a Seroquel, it's mercy. I want to sleep this off. It's like a bad dream. Even talking about this now, I can feel pressure in my head. Last night I felt like my brain was reorganizing. Like I felt this energy spinning in my head. That's the first time I've felt that. This time around at least, because the rest of the time it was energy in my body, or these stories of the past and things. It was a lot. And it was nice because 2 days ago it let up for half the afternoon and the evening, and then it was there the next day, but then it let up at night. Today it hasn't really been there so much. I had a little bit of so-called maybe anxiety when I first started talking to myself, And this morning when I woke up, I felt some kind of like menthol feeling in my arms, but it hasn't really translated into stories. And oh, I better stop. If I imagine that I am somewhat through the worst of it, because typically, whether I'm out of the psych ward or in the psych ward, except that really bad stay when they tried to put me on long-term antipsychotics, it lasts about a week to 10 days. It was 2 hospitalizations where I was in for 8 to 10 days, out, off work for a week, then back to work. Then in January, took Seroquel for 2 weeks and was off. Well, that's when I quit that other job and blah, blah, blah. But I was unable to talk to myself for a week because I was too out of it and afraid. And then it's been about a week now, actually 5 days. And like I said, I only slept for a day and a night. And then I've been up and doing stuff, though it's been really challenging. So it seems like it's getting faster, where I'm better able to get through it. And that's how it seems, at least. So if I am through it, it might be a good idea to switch back into healing mode a little bit. Before I started talking to myself, before I had my very first so-called relapse in February of 2015, after I tapered off my meds with the help of my doctor. Before that, I did a lot of things with the money I was making. I was working in a medical office. I did rolfing and colon hydrotherapy, and almost every dollar I spent besides food and rent was on contributing to my well-being somehow, in usually a pretty out there way. Not many people do a 10 series of rolfing or 6 series of colon hydrotherapy or take all these courses. And since that bad hospitalization in April 2016, I've shifted into this scarcity mentality, and I haven't been able to work as much because I fear whatever. But it's the type of work. I do need to get away from this mental health work, and I have 2 more weeks of it, and then maybe I need to take a break. I don't even know if right now is a good time to take the self-employment class. I'll try. Part of me wants to go to the island, but we'll see. If the universe lets me take the self-employment class, then it lets me. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but if I am through, I'm thinking it'd be cool to do some acupuncture maybe and invest. I was trying to look up transpersonal psychotherapy, because a lot of these dynamics are me and past, but there's a lot more to it than that. So it'd be cool to have somebody train in transpersonal stuff. And I might have found one guy that's not too far away, because that was the main thing, is not being too far away in terms of driving distance. So I might invest in that, because that's something I've never invested in. But as these things happen, these emotional emergencies, and it becomes more clear what it is, as opposed to, oh, it's delusion, it's hallucination, it's psychosis, it doesn't make sense, it's making sense as to why I'm so troubled from this life, from last life, from possible futures, from interacting with others, and also remembering that sometimes having an office job, smiling at people and saying hi is simple. Sometimes there's a sense of I know too much, and then feeling like people understand that too, but they don't, and it's so confusing. And then in feeling, oh, I know so much and people don't get it, it pulls me back into, wow, look at all this crap. And then who am I to say anything about anything? What do I know? And ugh. Okay, I'm not making sense, but I think I'm being too complex, too complicated. And when I think back to periods in my life where I was thriving more, it was very simple and present and being generous with people. And so one needs money to be generous or not, or blah, blah, blah. And so this relates to how I've been reading this book. I read it, and yeah, I'm going back to reading a bit and utilizing that to experience extraordinary minds, because I've been talking to myself a lot, and then I've lived my dream of California, tapering off meds, and I used to read a lot, and then I haven't in a long time. But the good thing about not drugging myself with Seroquel during the day is that I can still read, I can still do almost anything. Then there's the challenge of the subtle psychosis, if you want to call it that, for simplicity's sake. But I can still do everything else. And as opposed to not experiencing all that, sleeping it off, not being able to do anything, which I'm still open to doing if I need to knock myself out for a couple days to stop the process. If it hasn't slowed down by itself, then I will. But anyways, a couple more things for sure is this guy. I find his writing very good. Seth Godin. This book is excellent. It's very encouraging for what I am creating. And now I'm reading a book of his. I'll have to find the title. I bought it because it was like $2 on Kindle. And then in his book, he mentioned another book he wrote called The Dip, which I'm going to buy on Kindle because it talks about knowing when to give up and knowing when to persevere through challenges. And this is a challenge, and I don't feel like I'm going to give up, and I don't think this is a failure. And I highlight kind of half the book, the Kindle book that I got. I find what he writes very pertinent to creating something, and he's talking about generosity and creating art and not worrying about the money side of it. And I'm not. I think I'm going to forget about that, even though I'm doing the business stuff, and not worry about what I'm going to get out of this or anything, because if I live through this, that will be the gift. That will be my present to myself, is living through this. Who cares about the money? God, sometimes I don't know if I'm going to make it till tomorrow. Whether that's a thought and a fear or an actuality, or fearing in those ways will create possible scenarios that could make that more actual. So the fear of fear becomes stronger, because the more fear there is there, the more it creates that. So I was afraid, and I sent a message to a friend, and then they called a helpline and the police got called. So it seems like my brain is trying to create these scenarios where the police might come and take me away to the psych ward or take me somewhere, and that's out of fear, which is part of thought. So negating that and being present with being in a park, yet knowing that anything could happen here right now. And that is partly based on the energy coming out of my brain. So it's so much responsibility, yet at the same time there's nothing one can do. It's baffling. So anyways, I'm liking the reading and just sort of sitting and being, and it's encouraging my brain, and it's the same thing happening where I'm thinking something and it's there in the book after the fact. So the universe is still encouraging this somehow. And I was going to give up on getting the new iPhone, but I think it would be good to get it because this one is really slow and freezes, and I think I do want to keep this dialogue going, and that might be all I can do is this dialogue. And I created a lot. Like, I got a mailbox, and so that costs money, and I bought that private embed plugin, that costs money. So spending a lot of money, it's like I'm creating something and trying to learn how to do something that might not even be created for 10 years, or at the same time not knowing if I'm going to make it for 10 years. So, and then feeling like, oh, I'm going to put all of them on my site, and then I might get killed, and then people see them later because they're scheduled to be released later. It's like, what am I doing? What am I creating? I don't even know. And then reading about trauma and what that does to the brain, and it really correlates with everything that I'm experiencing. So feeling like, whoa, this is more trauma than psychosis and mental illness, of course. But then, okay, if it's trauma, how do I get help when I don't have a lot of money? Or if I'm running around trying to fix that, then it's fear-based. And I do feel I need to resolve some of that. Otherwise it keeps derailing the other part. And then creating this and feeling like this could change things somewhat, but then it changes it to possibly make people feel a little bit more personally responsible, which the mental illness paradigm takes that away, which is a blessing sometimes. So that's part of what I was struggling with. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't have this I believe in mental illness thing to fall back on. And then it's like, wow, I did this all to myself, and I have to fix this myself, and how do I fix this myself? And then realizing I'm not a separate self, so others will help, but do they know how? And can I ask? And what do I ask for? And it's just so mind-boggling. And that's the theme right now. Boggled mind. But yeah, I'm going to keep reading this guy and keep creating these videos and get the iPhone and da-da-da-da-da. So the book I'm reading right now by Seth Godin, or Godin, is Linchpin. Are you indispensable? That's for the universe to decide. Excuse me. And I'm going to make an offering to the universe. I have a little Om change purse. It isn't much, but it's the gesture that counts. There was somebody who came up and talked to me, and they put their beverage container in the garbage when the recycling is right over there. So that's when there's some kind of incoherence sometimes in interactions. It's like, oh, friendly person, hello, hey, ho there, how's it going? And you just put your thing in the garbage, and there's a recycling container 10 feet over to the other side. And then, of course, that person likely always throws it in the garbage. Blah, 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 whatever. Who am I to say yeah, that's what I've been dealing with this week, is how awful I have been, I could be, I will be. It's part of the thing, is sometimes I feel unworthy of being alive. We all do, sometimes. But when I don't feel that, I'm fine. So it seems like it's my biorhythm. I'm either completely fine creating and all that, or not fine at all, can't even function. And we all have that to a certain degree, and we escape it with different things, like food or alcohol. I escaped some of it with Seroquel. I'm not sure how much I want to talk about more today. I'm gonna go get some gasoline for my car because it's a Sunday and it's quieter on the streets, so that'll be easier. And then if I do decide to go to work on Tuesday, I can. And if I do go to work on Tuesday, that means that I'll have missed a week of life, which is the least ever. So it seems I'm getting better at this process. But not better in a way, because when it's over, I tend to go on creating and not acknowledge that stuff. And I don't know if that's the right way. And the thing is that with the mental illness paradigm, the meds kick in, and then it's easy to not acknowledge that. Not easy, but people aren't offered counseling, which I'm seeing is important. Well, obviously it's important, but it's just not offered. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. Was this morning, since I felt kind of good when I woke up, I felt calm, felt cozy in my body. I decided not to take any micronutrients or niacin, so I edited out the amino acids, and I took the lipospheric vitamin C, and I had waffles for breakfast, and then at around 11 I took the niacin and waited an hour to see if I would feel any kind of body pain or so-called anxiety, and nothing. And then I took the micronutrients at noon and did the same thing, waited an hour, and I did feel some energy changes in my body. And it wasn't as bad a pain, or it wasn't really pain, it was just energy moving, kind of mentally. So I could say, oh, well, the micronutrients are causing anxiety, or I could say they're causing energy to move. The micronutrients could be giving the nutrition to be able to process some of this stuff and see it and be with it, as opposed to blanking it out, in which case it's going to bubble up at some point when the body becomes so toxic, and then one doesn't have the resources internally to deal with it, so it moves to external chaos and people shuffling other people around through the system and talking to people about stuff, and then trying different ways to numb it out. So yeah, I saw that the micronutrients do bring some of it on. I'm wondering, since I had a test for pyrrole disorder, if the copper in it is bothering me, because I'm not supposed to have as much copper with pyrrole disorder, and the micronutrient is a broad spectrum, and it doesn't take individuality into account as much. That's one of the critiques of it, I think. But it's helping me broadly get through this, it seems. So we'll see what happens with that. And yeah, so I'm going to keep a closer eye on that today. I'm going to take some more niacin. Maybe it's good to take those two things further apart. I might also try taking 2 micronutrients at a time every however hours, and take up to 12 a day. It could have been not so good that I was taking 16 a day for quite a while. But at the same time, it was time for it to happen. So again, there's some correlation to things, but there's no real cause, and trying to figure out causes, isn't it? But it's more like one's inner state correlates with what one is doing on the outer. So I was feeling really energetic, so I was taking more energy nutrients. Not that it necessarily caused that, but, or the nutrients caused it, but that state caused me to take more of that. So, yeah. People. There's a tiny little bug fly that is quite detailed. Maybe if it's still there, I'll try and get it on my macro lens. That's the thing. When out in nature, there's different epi-gestures of capturing the beauty of nature. Why can't I see and be beauty around those who supposedly know me? Do they know me? I don't even know myself. I could say they don't understand me. I don't even understand myself. So where's the humility and the compassion? And they show mercy and compassion. And it is fall. Time for the fall. And I have learned too that it's imperative that I design a life where I'm more mobile and free, and with the sun. This is ridiculous. I'm sensitive to cold and smells, and my brain is so sensitive to noise. It's so challenging. So yeah, if this escalates or something, I don't know if I'll try a different approach, if I'll try to numb it out more or what. But I do feel this process eventually has to stop. If I had a nice respite to rest and really process this stuff, that would be great, but it's not really practical right now. But at least I can drive because I'm not totally numbing myself out. And yeah, even just less than 24 hours ago, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. But I think the worst of it's over, even though I did make a video saying I think the worst of it's over and more of it comes up. So I'm hoping that it stops. That's the part I'm wondering, if it will stop, even though I didn't do the whole numb myself out for 3 days on quite substantially more Seroquel, which I've done in the past in January and in March and in the psych wards times before that. This is the first time that I've used very, very minimal antipsychotics, and I haven't really talked about how this could be seen as a failure. I don't think it is. I've been so tempted to call my psychiatrist, and that is an option. Call the psychiatrist, go to a short stay facility, get put back on the meds, be back in that paradigm. The other option is going to somewhere peaceful. There's options. And sometimes as soon as my brain sees a possibility like that, it invokes or evokes the mercy. Like, okay, I can get through this. And it's my doing. And who is me and my? I really don't know. I'm more lost than ever. And I need to surrender to that.